Now let's talk about the godfather of Bollywood industry, Amitabh Bachchan.
Yep.
Yeah. People almost look up to him or they worship him. They see him more than, they don't feel like he's a human. He's more like God-like. So, what do you have to say when people think that he's like the smartest person in the Bollywood industry?
Yeah, so Mr. Bachchan is an incredibly gifted actor. He's incredibly hardworking. I'm sure plenty of people in the world would consider him as the best actor in the history of mankind. And I'm personally a huge fan. But for the purpose of this series, we want to highlight that plenty of successful people are not as smart as most people think they are. Now, Mr. Bachchan is an actor. At the same time, if you watch his interviews and see stuff that he talks about, you would understand that he is a very intelligent person. He speaks very well, he speaks with depth, he really knows what he's talking about, and he's an extremely intelligent man. At the same time, he did something which you would not have expected him to do, and that is start ABCL, which is like huge business, which is in all practical ways quite different from acting on screen. Right? It's managing a company, it's managing people, it's managing investors, it's managing finances, which really doesn't appear to be his strength or his cup of tea. So that's a huge mistake made by him. He suffered a lot financially for it, and he spent a lot of time, I think several years, repaying debts that he had taken to launch that company. And he had a huge break with Kaun Banega Crorepati, which according to sources was a big turning point for him after the loss, and helped him to recover from the loss, helped him to get back in the limelight, helped him to get a lot of work and all that. So the important point here is that an extremely intelligent man like Mr. Amitabh Bachchan also had mental limitations, took a decision which was such a severely bad decision that he took a big fall. And if KBC wouldn't have come along, we don't know how badly his situation would have dragged along. So again, the point is not to look down upon anybody or just be negative. It's to make people understand that all these super successful figures are human, and humans have limited brains.
Right.
They tend to make mistakes.
So if that is the case, that does not mean that one will not stop making mistakes, but we can make smarter mistakes?
Yes, absolutely. One can make lesser mistakes.
So lesser mistakes.
One can think better and take smarter decisions.
Right.
So I'm also suggesting that if people who hold these figures in high esteem get the understanding that they also can make huge mistakes,
right,
then you would be more willing to accept the idea that the person who's watching this video is not as smart as he thinks he is. Right? Almost all the people in the world think that they are smarter than they actually are. This is not an opinion. This is the product of research. The research is called the self-serving bias. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's called the Lake-Wobegon effect. So it's been researched over a huge population, and this is the conclusion that psychologists have come to, that most people are not as smart as they think they are. Now, when people think they're very smart and they're not really that smart, they take foolish decisions. And and that can have terrible, terrible consequences. So what's the point of saying this? I don't want to be an alarmist. I don't want to just say, oh, this is a problem, just keep saying it's a problem. I'm here to offer a solution. And the solution is that you firstly need to recognize that, yeah, I have limited cognitive abilities. I'm not as brilliant as my mom thinks I am. And you need help. And you should be willing to take as much help as you can to take better decisions.
So taking help is not a sign of weakness.
Yes, absolutely. Though plenty of people will think of you as weak, it's perfectly fine if other people think you're weak, whereas you're taking right decisions. Ultimately, he's going to acknowledge that you made the right decisions. Whether he calls you weak or strong is immaterial. I mean, you care about your well-being and you care about your major decisions in life. One of the easiest ways to have better thinking skills, to make better decisions, is to use mental tools. There are plenty of mental tools. Linear notes is a mental tool, a flowchart is a mental tool, lateral thinking is full of mental tools, a mind map is a mental tool. You can use whichever mental tool I suggest you try out as many mental tools as possible and use the ones that make sense, and then keep on looking out for something better. If you don't find anything better, then stick with what you have. This is backed by research. There's a lot of research. I just want to talk about one research because this gentleman is really prominent. His name is James Flynn. He's probably the most prominent intelligence researcher on the planet. There are lots of resources available. He's written books. You can check out his TEDx talk on YouTube. He has proved that the average IQ of every generation has been higher than the average IQ of the previous generation, right since evolution of Homo sapiens, of us as human beings. And to make that simpler, we are smarter than our ancestors who existed on the planet 100 years ago. And the reason for that is there are plenty of tools, mental tools available today that we did not have 100 years ago. Just imagine language itself was thought of as being invented 40,000 years ago. So imagine the guy who existed, say, 30,000 years ago, and imagine the guy who existed 50,000 years ago. The guy who existed 30,000 years ago had language, had a lot of stuff in language to relate to. Whereas the guy who existed 50,000 years ago had no language at all. They probably had some primitive language and all that, but they didn't have sophisticated language. So obviously the person who existed 30,000 years ago had much more intelligence than a person who existed 50,000 years ago. So that's a big example, but in every generation, lots of tools come along which help you with better thinking. And that's why we have much better thinking than people who existed in the planet about 100 years ago. Plenty of tools have come in within the last 100 years which were not available to these guys. Maybe calculus is a tool, maybe a flowchart is a tool, maybe a Venn diagram is a tool that did not exist 100 years ago or maybe 200 years ago. Which
mathematical formulas could be a tool.
Absolutely, absolutely.
To solve complex problems.
Yeah. So tools, concepts, algorithms, I'm just using the term tools to summarize all these that make us smart. So I am encouraging people to not only understand this concept. It's difficult when you people to adopt tools because number one is they need to believe that yes, I need to be smarter. I'm not as smart as I think, and I need help. That itself is a big stumbling block. Plenty of people will never.
That's, I think, the mental stigma.
Yeah, there's a mental. So that's an internal mental stigma, and then some people may be convinced that yeah, I need to use mental tools, but what do other people say? So if you just look at the number of meetings for which people come to without a pen and paper, I mean, it's alarming. In almost all the meetings that I have attended my entire life, there has been at least one person who's come without a pen and paper. So That's terrible. So these people think that they will be able to understand everything and memorize everything that's happening in a meeting. They think that they have such high cognitive abilities. They don't. And because of which efficiency suffers, productivity suffers, meetings are a waste of time, companies don't do well because of lack of productivity. So the final message is that you got to realize that you're not as smart as you think. You got to realize that you have to use mental tools. It doesn't matter what somebody else thinks. You think about improving your life. And the slogan that I want to sign off with is, don't join the fools. Use mental tools.